People should be concerned about how easily, how quickly, how smoothly this House passes year after year severe restrictions on people's civil liberties, extending supposed emergency powers, and denies people basic human rights. 2 hours and a bit of a debate, a couple of votes, off we go for another year until we repeat this farce again. We should centre what this debate is about. This debate is about denying the right of people to have a jury. It's recognised in the Constitution as a fundamental right, part of the right to a fair trial, but some people are going to be denied the right to a jury. It's about saying that the uncorroborated opinion of a Chief Superintendent of a Garda can be treated as fact in the court of law. And it's about denial of the right of the accused to stay silent. In the Special Criminal Court, your right to be silent can be used against you in the court of law as evidence supporting the case against them. It's a gross abuse of emergency powers and a violation of human rights. We know that human rights organisations of all sorts, the ICCL, Amnesty International, the state's own Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission, the UN Human Rights Committee, over and over and over again, have called for the end of the Special Criminal Court. And yet every year, the government and most of the opposition wave it through on a wink and a nod. The ICCL have rightly described this annual debate as an exercise in rubber stamping. You could also call it an exercise in respectability politics, where the vast majority of the opposition fail to oppose something that they know is unjust, that they know is a restriction on basic civil liberties, simply because they're afraid of being labelled as being soft on crime or soft on terrorism. This applies above all to Sinn Féin, who used to correctly oppose this restriction, oppose this use of diplock courts, and who now, after putting forward an amendment, which will be voted down, then abstain on the motion. So the government and most of the opposition have presided over a disgraceful situation, where so-called emergency powers that suspend human rights are renewed year after year for 52 years now. Every year, I point out, and others, that the Special Criminal Court has never really been about combating organised crime or terrorism. It's about maximising the repressive powers of the state and the ability of the state to jail potential opponents that might threaten the status quo. And we have evidence of that, because in the last year, we have seen a wave of terrorism across the state, of far-right terrorism, upwards of 30 arson attacks against accommodation for refugees, a far-right inspired and led riot that caused millions of euros in damage and shut down Dublin city centre. But the Offences Against the State Act was not used. Why? Because the Special Criminal Court is a deeply political court. It's only used against those that the state and the government consider as an existential threat to the established order, which clearly does not include the far right. Far from it. They got the polar opposite treatment to Republican and nationalist dissidents. Rather than being subjected to diplock courts and imprisonment on the word of a Garda, they are handled with kid gloves. Orders come down from on high to take a softly approach. It could not be stronger evidence that the racist ethno-nationalists of the far right are a support to the status quo rather than a threat to it. Besides the emergence of the far-right campaign, what have we in the last year? Well, just before the last vote, we had the report, a majority report, which recommends the end of this legislation, and a minority report, which correctly recommends the end of a permanent non-jury court. Will anything be done about it? It doesn't seem like it. We know we had a report published back in 2002 where not a single one of its recommendations has been implemented. It's just a mechanism to kick the can down the road. I support the Irish Council for Civil Liberties. I support their campaign. I support the fact that they've eviscerated the idea that this is the only way to prevent jury tampering. It's complete nonsense. Other methods are used around the world. I hope that their campaign can persuade some opposition TDs to set aside their rubber stamp this year. Sinn Féin, the Social Democrats and Labour, I'm looking at all of you.
Gary.